Have you ever felt humiliated in front of everyone by the one person you trusted the most? The one person who was supposed to be proud of you, but instead they tore you down in front of an entire crowd? That was the moment everything changed for me. This is the story of how I stood up to my dad at his retirement party and took back my voice. It was supposed to be a night of celebration. My dad was retiring after decades of hard work, and everyone in the family was there to show their appreciation. I thought I'd be proud of him, celebrating the life he had built. But instead, I found myself standing there, feeling something I hadn't in a long time. Anger. Deep, raw anger. For as long as I could remember, my dad had always found ways to make me feel small. He didn't see my worth, no matter how hard I tried. My accomplishments, my dreams, my struggles, they were never enough. Growing up in a family where perfection was the standard was hard enough, but my dad's criticism always felt like a personal attack. It wasn't that I didn't try. I worked hard, did well in school, and took on responsibilities, but it was never acknowledged the way my brother's achievements were. My dad always reserved his praise for him. No matter what I did, it was never enough. I was always the second choice, the afterthought. But what happened that night? That changed everything. The evening started off like any other family event. Cheers and laughter filled the air as we celebrated my dad's retirement. There was food, music, and people from his work life coming up to shake his hand and share their respect. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I tried to ignore it, just be happy for him. But deep inside, I was hurt. It wasn't until he stood up to give his speech that the first wave of discomfort hit me. He spoke highly of his colleagues, thanked everyone for their support, and even mentioned his wonderful children without naming anyone specifically. But then, as he shifted his attention to me, the words that came out of his mouth cut through the air like a knife. "Of course, not all of my kids turned out to be as successful as I'd hoped," he said with a chuckle, looking at me with a smirk. "Some are still trying to figure out their lives." And there it was. The jab. The subtle dig that he had made so many times before, but this time, it was public. This time, it was in front of everyone. My family laughed, and I sat there, frozen. My heart sank. My father, the person who was supposed to build me up, just humiliated me in front of an entire room. I was stunned. I sat there for a few moments, just staring at him as the laughter died down. I could feel the tears threatening to fall, but I refused to let them show. I had always been the quiet one, the one who kept her emotions in check, but this time, something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the joke, it was the years of being overlooked. It was the years of working hard and getting nothing in return. Nothing but his disappointment. That moment, standing there in front of everyone, I realized I had to stop. I had to stop allowing him to define my worth. Without thinking, I stood up. The room fell silent as my chair scraped against the floor. My heart was pounding in my chest, my palms sweating. But I didn't care. I couldn't let him get away with this. Not anymore. I walked up to the front, took the microphone from his hand, and faced the crowd. My dad's face went pale, and he opened his mouth to say something, but I was already speaking. "You know what, Dad?" I said, my voice trembling, but strong. "I've had enough. I'm done being your joke. I'm done being the one you criticize when you should be proud of me. You've always made me feel like I wasn't good enough, but I'm here to tell you that I am enough. I don't need your approval. I never did." The silence in the room was deafening. I didn't care. I wasn't looking for their approval anymore. I wasn't looking for his approval anymore. For the first time in my life, I was speaking for myself, and that felt
The tension
liberating.
in the room was thick, like a heavy fog that couldn't be cleared. My dad, speechless, looked at me as if he had just witnessed something he couldn't comprehend. The shocked expressions of my family didn't help either. They didn't know what to do or say. But in that moment, I didn't care. I had finally said what I needed to say. I looked around at the faces in the room, my mom, my brother, my aunts, uncles, and friends, all of them staring back at me, some with judgment, others with disbelief. My dad still stood there, his face a mask of confusion and embarrassment. He had never seen me like this before. And honestly, neither had I. It wasn't like me to confront him, to challenge his authority. I had spent years silently carrying the weight of his disappointment, trying to gain his approval. But standing there, in front of everyone, it felt like a dam had broken inside me. The flood of years of hurt, of feeling second best, of being constantly compared to my brother, who could do no wrong, came rushing to the surface. "I don't need your approval," I repeated, my voice gaining strength. "You've never seen me for who I am. You've only seen me for what I wasn't. But that ends now. I'm done being made to feel small." I could see my dad's jaw tighten. His eyes flicked to my brother, who was looking away uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. But in that moment, it didn't matter. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my worth. The silence stretched on, but I didn't back down. I could feel my heart racing, but my legs were firm. I wasn't going to let him break me again. Not this time. My dad finally opened his mouth, his voice low and shaky. "You shouldn't be doing this here at my retirement party," he said, his words almost pleading. "This isn't the time or place." But it was the perfect time and place. It had to be. If I didn't say it now, I might never have the courage again. So I shook my head, letting out a deep breath to steady myself before speaking again. "No, Dad. The time is now. This isn't about your retirement or about some party. This is about me finally standing up for myself. This is about me finally saying that I am enough, with or without your approval, and I'm done pretending to be happy with the scraps you give me." At that moment, I knew I had crossed a line. But for the first time, I felt free. Free from the years of resentment, free from the weight of trying to please someone who could never be pleased. My dad's face was flushed, his pride wounded. He didn't know how to respond, but for me, it didn't matter. I had made my point. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I didn't stay for the after party, didn't engage with anyone else. I just walked out of that room, feeling a sense of relief I hadn't known in years. It wasn't an easy decision. Confronting my dad, especially in front of everyone, was something I never thought I would do. But sometimes, you have to break the silence to let the healing begin. And in that moment, I had broken my silence. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my dad would ever forgive me, or if our relationship would ever be the same. But I knew one thing. I would never let myself be put down like that again. I would never let anyone make me feel small, not even him. The weeks after that night were tough. My dad didn't speak to me. He didn't call. He didn't even look at me the way he used to when we crossed paths in the house. It was as if I had crossed a line that couldn't be undone, and maybe I had. But you know what? I wasn't going to apologize. In a way, I was relieved. For so long, I had tiptoed around him, waiting for his approval like a dog waiting for a treat. But when I stood up to him, I realized something important. I didn't need his approval to be worthy. I had my own worth. I had my own dreams. And no one, not even my dad, could take that from me anymore. For the first time in my life, I began to live for myself. I focused on my career, my relationships, and my own happiness. It wasn't always easy, but it was the first time in a long time that I felt truly free. I wasn't weighed down by the constant need to please my dad. I wasn't waiting for his validation to feel good about myself. A few months passed and things didn't improve with my dad. The distance between us grew, and I wondered if our relationship would ever be the same. But then, something unexpected happened. One day I got a call from my dad. It was the first time he had reached out to me since the party. I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought maybe he would be angry, maybe he'd tell me I had ruined the family. But when I picked up the phone, I heard something different in his voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I was ready to hear what he had to say, or if I was ready to forgive him for all those years of hurt. But I knew that at some point, I had to decide if I was willing to move forward, with or without him. We met up a few days later. He was quiet at first, and I could tell he was struggling to find the right words. But then he spoke, and it caught me off guard. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," he said. "I was wrong. I should never have treated you the way I did. I'm sorry." I could hear the sincerity in his voice. But part of me was still hesitant. The damage had been done, and it wasn't something that could be undone with just a few words. But in that moment, I realized something. He had finally acknowledged the hurt he had caused. He had finally seen me, not as the child he expected me to be, but as the woman I had become. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied, trying to hold back my emotions. "But it's going to take time." "You hurt me, Dad, and that's not something I can just forget." He nodded, understanding. "I know," he said, "but I hope we can rebuild things." "I'm willing to try." And that's what we did. Slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But with time, we found a way to understand each other. Standing up to my dad was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my right to be seen as more than just a disappointment. It was about finally accepting that I don't need anyone's approval to be enough. And while my relationship with my dad may never be the same, I learned that sometimes breaking free from the chains of approval and validation is the only way to truly be free. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't just about confronting someone. It's about confronting the part of you that's been quieted for too long. And when you finally find the courage to speak, that's when everything changes. And that's how I stood up to my dad at his retirement party. It wasn't about revenge, it was about liberation. And I hope, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel small, overlooked, or unworthy, you'll remember, you don't need anyone's permission to be proud of who you are. Your worth is already within you,